The stretch of river which have supposedly claimed the life of missing mother of two Nicola Bulley has been blighted by string of deadly tragedies. The river has a dark history and notorious reputation. Almost 45 years to the day Ms Bulley vanished, it was the scene of a fatal crash, which killed a teenage boy, whose body floated down the river and wasn't found for months. Roger Jones was 16 when he disappeared after a motorcycle crash in 1978 on or around the 27th of January. Roger was a pupil at the former Fulwood High School, where he was working to go to Myerscough College to study agriculture and follow his dream of becoming a farmer. The 16-year-old had been returning home one night as a passenger on a friend's motorbike when they crashed into a car on a narrow bridge in Woodplumpton, near Preston. Roger was thrown into Barton Brook, which eventually flows into the River Wyre less than a mile upstream of the bench where Ms Bulley's spaniel Willow and mobile phone were found. The bike rider was badly injured and unconscious when emergency services arrived, and was unable to tell them he had a passenger. It was 3 a.m. before police were alerted that someone was missing and returned to the bridge. While a massive police search was launched, that included dog patrols, divers, and mounted police, Roger's body was not discovered until 2 months later, when it washed up on a sandbank at low tide 7 miles from St. Michael's, the town where Nicola was last seen. Reese Mayberry, 2, from Rochdale drowned in May 1, 2000 after he disappeared from the River Wyre Caravan Park, Mains Lane, Singleton. A major search operation was launched at 12:15 p.m., after the child's grandfather reported him missing from the caravan site. Police helicopters were launched and the Coast Guard called out as members of the public joined in the search along the banks during high tide. The child's body was found 2 hours later, on a sand bank in the shadows of Shard Bridge, half a mile downstream near the foot of the Shard Bridge. Gede Lynch, Liverpool Coast Guard manager who helped coordinate the search, said that despite the hot weather on the bank holiday, the water temperature of the River Wyre was still low enough to cause hypothermia. In May 1984, a waterworks on the River Wyre exploded in a cataclysmic blast that leveled the facility. At the time, a group of 44 people, many from St. Michael's on Wyre where Nicola Bulley was last seen, had been touring the plant. Unbeknown to them, a lethal amount of methane had built up in a pipe and was ignited, causing a huge fireball to rip through the underground complex. 8 people were killed instantly, with the blast causing the reinforced concrete pillars and ceilings to collapse. A huge rescue operation was launched, involving more than 20 ambulances, firefighters and heavy lifting kit. Cranes were used to pull concrete beams from the wrecked underground chamber where most of the victims were, when the blast happened. Survivors spoke of how a huge call of flames engulfed them, trapping many inside. Others were thrown out into a neighboring field by the force of the blast. One villager from St. Michael's, Pat Kaler, was blown out of the entrance doorway by the force of the explosion. "I just sat on the wall," she told the BBC. "My clothes were practically all burned off and my skin was just in tatters, and I could hear everybody inside crying and screaming." The explosion caused the ceiling of the underground chamber to come crashing down on top of the visitors, who had been invited to tour the facility by Northwest Water Authority following recent flooding of their village. The crater immediately filled with river water. Ambulanceman Mike Abel, who was part of the emergency team scrambled to help the wounded, described a scene of complete carnage. "As we came over the crest, we saw this big hole in the ground. It was big enough to put 2 or 3 double-decker buses in," he told the BBC on the 30th anniversary of the disaster, in 2014. Unfortunately, there was a lot of people inside at the time. 8 of those who had survived the initial blast died later, bringing the death toll to 16. Of the remaining survivors, some were left horrifically injured, with one consultant plastic surgeon telling that the burns were the worst he had ever seen. The cause of what ignited the blast was never determined.